Hey everyone, good afternoon and welcome. Today we're going to talk about promotion quotas, what exactly they are, kind of how their managers think about them, and what you can do as an individual contributor to maximize your potential in meeting the promotion quota and get through the cut line. My name's Milan, and in the 30 years I spent working my way to senior level in Fortune 100 company, we've had to deal with promotion quotas. I mean, we deal with them as a manager and how do you actually utilize them to promote the right people? And also as an individual contributor, when you're told, sorry, you didn't quite make the cut. I'm really sorry, and we hope you can make it next time. So a couple of housekeeping tips is I'd love to kind of get a sense of people that are here. So if you would, give me a shout out in the chat. Let me know what's working. There is a little bit of a lag between the time that the video starts and when the chat comes through, but I'd really like to know that it's working. And again, I'd love to know who's here visiting with us today. And also, if you have questions, please just put Q colon and put the question in chat, and I will get to it either immediately during the section that we're in, or at the end, I'll stick around and answer any of the questions that come through. And if you have any experiences of your own, please do share them with all of our peers because everybody can benefit from the discussion. So let's talk about the promotion quota and what it is first. And then we'll follow that by the management mindset. And then thirdly, by some tactical things you can do as an individual as well. So promotion quotas, right? They're stupid. They shouldn't have them. Everybody should just get promoted when they're ready. It shouldn't matter like when that happens. The company should just promote people. Right. And I want a cookie every day and a gold star for everything I do. I'd like to think that was a reality, but it just isn't. And it's not something the company does to keep people down. It really isn't. Promotion quotas are really have to deal with a budget. And the company can only afford to promote so many people in a given year based on the growth of the company, the economic status, because there's a cost, right? Promotions are usually followed with some kind of salary increase or some kind of RSU or bonus potential. And so it's a real cost in order to promote people. Now, we're not going to talk in this discussion about how to get ready for promotion. We're going to take into effect and to account that the people that we're talking about have already passed the bar that they're ready for the next level. And what we're really talking about is the timing when the company can afford to promote them. So what does it mean in terms of the promotion budget? Now, the budget, there's two ways it usually happens. One way is with a dollar amount. And then, of course, then you eat off the dollar amount based on the promotion budget you can give to a particular person at a particular level. Or the other way is generally they give a target percentage of an organization. And for this discussion, I'm going to use a target organization size of 100. Now, 100 makes the math pretty simple. Obviously it scales up or down based on the size of the organization. So a realistic percentage I've seen in the last 10 years for a particular year might be about a 7% promotion budget, which means that you could promote 7 people out of a team of 100. So let's break that down just a bit. If you have 7 people and you break that between managers and individual contributors, and you break that down between senior, mid-level, and then also junior, then what you're looking at is the challenge of there just probably isn't enough money to cover all the people that are eligible for promotion at a particular time. Now, I have seen it in certain years where, yes, the promotion budget is actually greater than the people that are ready. But if managers are doing a great job and the individuals are really working on their careers, there will be many years where the promotion budget will not be enough to cover everybody who's technically ready. And that's when, the quota or the restriction comes into play. So for this discussion, to make the math simple, we're going to say that there are 10 individuals who are actually eligible for promotion. And you have room for a 7% promotion, but you have 10% of your people who have gone through the process, they've been recommended, they have all the right approvals that you have to do. So what does that really means is then, whether we like it or not, it means there's going to be a stack rank or a lifeboat exercise. And look, I know you're not supposed to talk about stack ranking. You're not supposed to stack rank people. Everybody gets promoted on the merit of their own actions. The budget just doesn't allow that. So you have to make decisions, and leadership teams have to decide who is they're going to promote if it's 7 out of 10 for the sake of this conversation. And the challenge with that is it's always been kind of a black box, even for myself, and it will change organization to organization. But what I will say is that there are many areas and things that are been fairly consistent in terms of the mindset. And that mindset's what's really important, and how managers and leaders and leadership teams think about the promotion quota and whom hits the bar and who doesn't. And so we're going to go through a few of those things as we continue the conversation. So let's talk about the manager mindset in terms of what is the number one factor that they take into consideration. So I'd love to hear people's reactions in the chat to say, hey, what are the things that you believe that managers take into consideration, the number one key thing? So remember, we're going to do a stack rank, and there are things that managers actually have to think about, but they're not always easy to understand what the number one factor is. Well, the number one factor that I've seen consistent in every organization where I've had to participate in a stack rank, the emotion is fear. Now, what do I mean by fear? They're afraid. And then you think about, what are they afraid of? And the reason that it's important to understand what managers and leaders are afraid of when it comes to a stack rank and a promotion quota is it drives the behavior of how they consider the people that are above the line. So the fears of losing key employees. You've heard the term, well, is so-and-so loose in socket? Now, that's an older term that's about, is a person loose in their seat, or are they completely happy with their job and what they're doing and their opportunities and maybe even their rewards and compensation? And that fear of losing top employees is what is generally known as bad attrition, because that is something that you can control. You can control their promotion velocity if they're doing the work. And if you only have so many slots, that fear of losing people can actually change. And I've seen it even in my own personal case where I was told this, it can change how they look at you as an individual for promotion. So that management fear is extremely important in determining how they look at the overall bucket of people that are eligible. And again, that's going to change based on level and based on the value, which we'll get to in a minute, and also the expectations of the people within those bands. And we'll talk about that more in the individual contributor section, because that's how you combat those different challenges. So the fear of losing, a long-term top-level employee is definitely one of the key factors. Now, the other is value. And then the value piece, there's a couple of aspects of this from the manager perspective we'll talk about. We've talked a little bit about, what's going on here? Sorry, technical difficulty. Thanks for your patience. One of the challenging things that we have with value is that there are different aspects of the value. The aspects of that is really, what does it mean for the putting out value in terms of production, and then values in terms of skill? Those are two different challenges that, when it comes to value, that managers and leaders take into consideration when they're looking at an employee. For example, when you're looking at an employee in terms of just output value, are they actually meeting the organizational currency at the highest level in the most important way? And the organizational currency is something I go into in a different video on the YouTube channel, but there's a way to understand and determine, is the value of work that you're putting out the right work and the most important work compared to necessarily your peers? Now, you're not directly comparing it to your peers because you can't see what they're doing, but you can work with your manager to make sure you are working on the right things. So that's the output value or production value. The other is skills value. Do you have a skill or something that, or this is the individual that is unique or that very few people have that's critical to the business? And that's the other thing that managers will look at in order to determine whether or not whether they're going to be promoted now, because again, it goes back to that fear of potentially losing that top employee. Oh, thanks, Nate. We have a comment from Nate here that says, makes decisions that are in line with budget and have significant impact in a problem area, and makes managers' job easier by taking that problem area off their plate. That's absolutely true. And Nate, hold on to that thought, because I will talk about that more from an individual perspective of how you can increase your overall value. So we've talked a little bit about the buckets, and the buckets of that, we look at our junior, middle, senior, and then IC and manager usually. Those are the 6 buckets if you want to look at it that way. Those 6 buckets become somewhat of a challenge as well, because if you only have 7 people in 6 buckets, you may not even have people in certain buckets, or you have multiple people in certain buckets that you have to then make differentiation between, because good managers will spread out promotions amongst all the level ranks, because you want to keep continuity, business continuity, through your entire business chain. So as you break it down, it becomes really challenging for managers to kind of figure out where do they need to spend the promotion dollars to minimize the corporate risk and maximize the corporate business profitability and operational throughput. So, okay, we've talked a bit about management. Now let's talk about the tactical steps an individual can actually do in order to maximize their value. So when it really comes down to maximizing it, and I'm going to diverge a little bit here about why I think this way. Anybody who knows me knows that I think in terms of worst case scenarios. And why do I think that way? Well, I think in terms of worst case scenarios because then it really helps me build good contingency plans. If I'm always in failure mode, and in the case I look at with a promotion quota, the failure mode to me as an individual working my way up is I have the worst possible manager, which I know in your cases isn't the case, but I always assume I have the worst possible manager who doesn't know how to give me good direction in terms of organizational currency and doesn't understand, and I don't know because I can't read their minds, whether or not they feel I am a key employee, a top employee. So if I look at those 3 things, I can then develop a plan around those. So proactively, what does that mean? It means that success for me as an individual comes when value and the fear, manager fear, intersect. And what I mean by that is when you are seen as such a valuable employee in one of these areas, we'll talk about Nate's comment in a minute as well, because it feeds very well into the value section, then being a top employee with them having some fear of losing you intersect, and it helps you rank high in the promotion quota, because you are then seen as the value that you provide is seen as important. It goes back to the organizational currency, and they're unsure of whether or not you could go find another job in another company, because as we all know, top employees usually can find a role in another company irrespective of the market status. Whether or not the entire tech industry in this case is hiring, top employees can usually land roles. And those are usually the ones you don't want to leave because they're adding the most value or have critical skills. So proactively, do you and your manager actually agree that the value that you're adding is top tier? And so this goes to the organizational currency. And when you talk to your manager about the value that you add, are you adding, are you totally on track with organizational value? Because in reality, a lot of people, multiple people can be ready for promotion, but it's usually clear who the top employees are, even if they're the same band, who's providing more value, who's hitting the right metrics, who's actually has the skill set, and who's actually pushing to take on more work. And this goes into Nate's comment here, which I love, which is one of the factors that differentiate you as an individual in terms of promotion opportunity, in terms of making the quota, is are you someone that actually takes on extra impact for the manager in picking up new things? Because just because you're ready for the next level doesn't mean that you're continuing to push and add that value by making the management's jobs easier or taking on significant projects and opportunities that have not been solved yet. And that is a definite way to push yourself as an individual, is by pushing through those things. And it is a hard one because I can tell you through personal experience that sometimes you take on what you think is a pretty big, significant issue, and it ends up not being as significant. And I know some people get frustrated and they think they've wasted a ton of time working on something that didn't necessarily pan out in terms of risk versus reward on providing additional value. But in those cases, what I tell people is you've probably learned a great skill along the way, or you've pushed yourself out of your comfort zone to learn something else new that will then add more value to you later down the road. So, is that value that you're providing higher by taking on these types of significant problem areas and solving them? The other one is do you have that real individualistic skill that nobody else on the team has, or you've developed something to a really high level that makes you extremely valuable as well? Because it's the combination of those two things that usually increase the value of what it is that you're providing for the organization. So again, there's the two different areas that I look at usually are the value of output. And as Nate says, are you solving significant problems for the organization? And are they the right significant problems that the organizational leadership really care about and have visibility to? Then the other is specialized skill sets that can be very difficult to replace if you end up leaving because you didn't meet your promotion timelines that you've set out with your manager due to the budget. So then let's talk about proactively when it comes down to the fear aspect of it. And this one, I'd say, is a little bit more controversial. And I'm going to talk about at least one or two situations where the way you approach this can be challenging. And again, it's going to be somewhat generationally specific, but I'm just going to come out and say it. Does the management team fear losing you? Because in many cases, even if you're ready for promotion, you might be pretty replaceable. Mid-level management could be one area of that. They could merge teams together if you leave because you're not a manager. So are they really going to feel organizational pain if you end up leaving for another company or role? Now, if you've worked really well on that value piece of it, meaning that your metrics are measured as really high of you personally adding value, you're taking on these special projects, kind of like what Nate said here, fixing problem areas, and you have specialized skills, believe me, they're going to probably fear losing you, especially if you've been active in managing your career and having discussions with your manager and you've been performing at the right level over time. Because I can tell you that lifers, we call them. I myself was one in my other company, so I thought my first major tech company, I was there for a long time. If they don't fear losing you, there's a chance that could work against you in a promotion quota. And I've seen this actually happen. This is how it happens. You have somebody who's been with a company a fairly long time. I'll say 10 plus years at this point, because the 30 years doesn't really exist. But being with a company for 10 years is a pretty long stint now. And frankly, a lot of people are there that long because they're pretty happy. They like the job, they even like their manager, but they still want to promote and advance their career. So you have this person, which I'll call person A. Then you have person B, who may have other experience, came in the company, maybe 5 years ago, but they're both about the same level in the organization with different experiences. But person B is, let's say they're both pretty top employees, right? They're both in the same band and there's only room to promote one of them. But person B is much, I won't say clear, but they've moved, when their career's not progressing, they're not getting promoted. You can see that by looking at their resume. They've been at companies long enough to add a lot of value, but they're not going to stick around long if they're not meeting their promotion expectations. If a manager has to take one, how do you think they're going to approach that decision? Okay, if you go back to the fear-based model, they don't want to lose a top employee and they don't want to impact the business negatively. Person A has pretty much already said they're not going to leave. They love what they're doing. Person B says, well, they haven't said they're leaving, but they have a clear history of it and they're not going to be very happy if they're not promoted. They're going to care way more than person A. Who do you think, in order to keep business continuity, what do you think the decision is going to be? I've seen it. I've seen it in other boards I've sat on, and I've seen it happen to individuals that I've talked to. And so all I'm saying is don't say you're going to be leaving your job. I'm not telling people go find another job, But you have to be clear with your manager in the discussion about your timing expectations for promotion. And I think that's where that whole model breaks down. I've worked with a lot of people when it comes down to this, and they say, well, I've talked to my manager. He or she knows I want to get promoted. They said I've eaten all the bars. But the one thing they don't talk about is the timeline. What do I have to show in what time frame to be fully considered and top of the list in the next promotion cycle? Now, they can't give you a specific answer to that, but what they can say is, well, you're adding value, you're meeting the bar, but it's kind of the basic bar. What are you doing to differentiate yourself, to push yourself higher in the list? Then you can develop a specific plan. Say, oh, I need to go work on this special project, as Nate says. Or maybe I will go and get some more training in a specific area that's important to my job. So, for example, in a audit firm, are you going to go after your CPA, or are you not going to get your CPA? And that's directed at Nate as well. But the point being is that those are the things that differentiate you if you really want to advance your career, because it is a competitive meritocracy in the end, and there isn't budget for everyone. So I'm not saying that you have to go threaten to leave, and so I don't want anybody to take that away. But the same point is, I believe you should keep your options open. And if you're growing your career and you're continuing to grow, by knowing what your worth is, it helps you then manage yourself in your career, in your current position with the promotion quota. It's worked for a number of people where if you don't make the first cut when you know that you're being recommended, you really have to then take the added step as an individual to have that very detailed conversation with your manager about what it will take to raise the bar for you. Because there's this great book out there called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it is not necessarily true that if you did not get promoted in this go around, but you were eligible, let's say you were one of the 3 out of the 10 that didn't get promoted, that you'll automatically get promoted in the next round, because there's going to be a new group of people that are moving their way up. So if you want to keep the bar at the same level, you're going to face the same risk again. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is you have to reset, you have to get critical, you have to go look at the work you're doing against the value of the organization. And is it going to change the game and raise you any higher if you didn't get through? Now, I will say that you should do that anyway. As part of your general career management, you should always be pushing. But in terms of the specific recommendation, you can even ask your manager, okay, what do I have to do now? Because it probably won't talk about the other people, but you will see who got promoted, because usually they announce it at some point. So you'll see who the other 7 were, and you'll know who was in your level band. And then you can start trying to dissect, well, what were they doing? And what do I need to do to raise my game for the next time around? So those are kind of the things that really kind of impact how you deal with a promotion quota. So we talked briefly about what a quota is and how they get handed down from the leadership team. We talked a bit about what it means for managers and the mindset around the value that they put on the individual employees, as well as the fear mentality of losing great employees, and how they really dissect in their heads how they make this decision when there has to be either the stack ranking exercise or the lifeboat exercise. Then we've talked a bit about, from an individual perspective, what are some of the things that you can do to really raise the game there? What can you do for yourself? How can you be more competitive next time? Or if you're going into it the first time, how do you have those conversations with your manager to assure that your organizational value is high enough so you can rank in the top part of the promotion quota bands that they have? So I hope this has been helpful. And for those that want to go back and review, I will timestamp this on the YouTube channel. And if you want to know more about the organizational currency and what that really means to ensure you're providing the right value, there's also a video or 2 on that there as well. And I would love for you to provide comments. If there are things that you think about, I'll take comments either in DM or in the YouTube channel in the comment section of this video, and I'll answer them all. So again, I want to thank everyone who showed up today. Thanks, Nate, for the comment. And if there are any questions, please feel free to reach out. And with that, I hope everybody has a great Monday and a great week overall. Thanks, everyone. Until next time.